The suspect vehicle enters the grounds of Heritage Middle School in East Cleveland. It proceeds down the access road to the school parking lot. This road is a dead end. The road to the left is a bypass around the grounds of the school. Zone cars 215 and 243A follow the suspect vehicle onto the grounds of Heritage Middle School. There is some confusion as to the officers' location. The officers believe they are in a water treatment plant due to the tubular construction of adjacent playground equipment. Vice Car 288 and Zone Car 227 arrive on the grounds of Heritage Middle School. The suspect vehicle nears the parking lot area of Heritage Middle School. Zone Car 244 arrives on scene. The suspect vehicle enters the parking lot of the school. Zone Car 326 arrives on the grounds of Heritage Middle School. The suspect vehicle veers right into the parking lot of the school, followed by Zone Car 215. Zone Car 243A proceeds straight. Vice Unit 285 arrives on scene. The driver of the suspect vehicle realizes there is no exit to the parking lot and attempts to turn around near a parking island in front of Zone Car 215, resulting in a collision between the two vehicles. The resulting collision and acceleration of the suspect vehicle partially spins the suspect vehicle. The suspect vehicle cannot drive to the right side of the island due to approaching zone cars blocking its path. Officer A states, "The engine revved and the driver gunned it." Officer A, the driver of Zone Car 215, exits the zone car and begins to approach the suspect vehicle, which is attempting to drive over the parking island. Officer A, in his haste to exit the zone car, leaves it in gear. Officer A's partner eventually controls the zone car. The suspect vehicle drives towards Officer A, who states the suspects are pointing guns. Officer A then fires 2 rounds at the driver and 2 rounds at the passenger of the suspect vehicle. A radio broadcast of shots fired is made at this time. The suspect vehicle passes Officer A and begins to drive out of the parking lot. Police cars continue to enter the grounds of Heritage Middle School. They are Vice Car 289, Officers E and F, Zone Car 238, Officer B and partner, Vice Car 388, Officer G and supervisor. Zone cars already in the parking lot follow the suspect vehicle out. The suspect vehicle begins to weave through arriving police cars in the parking lot access drive of Heritage Middle School. Vice Car 289, Officers E and F begin to turn around after the suspect vehicle nearly collides with them. Zone Car 244 and Vice Car 285 pull to the curb to avoid the suspect vehicle. Zone Cars 217, Officers C and D, Vice Car 381, Officers I and H arrive on scene. The suspect vehicle passes Car 285 and heads towards Cars 238 and 217. Vice Car 289, Officers E and F drive over the grass near the playground to pursue the suspects. Zone Car 243, Officers J and K, and Zone Car 232, Officers L and M arrive. Officer B exits the passenger side of Car 238 and stands outside between the door and body of the police car. The suspect auto weaves around the police cars in the access road and drives toward Officer B. Officer B sees the suspect vehicle is not stopping and begins to run backwards, firing at the driver of the suspect vehicle. Officer B was not aiming, quote, just pointing at the direction of the windshield of the driver's side. This begins the main volley of fire. Officers E and F exit Vice Car 289. They see the suspect vehicle collide with Zone Car 238 and state that they see a look of fear on Officer B's face. The suspect vehicle collides with the passenger side of Car 238 and comes to rest. The suspect vehicle was traveling at approximately 15 to 20 miles per hour at the time of the collision. The other police cars near the parking lot area stop, and the officers take cover in their zone cars upon hearing the shots being fired. Officer C reports the occupants of the suspect vehicle both point dark objects at the officers. Officer C hears shots fired from the suspect vehicle. Officer C begins to fire through the windshield of Zone Car 217 at the driver and then passenger. Officer C believes a weapon malfunction occurs and reloads inside the zone car. Officer D is struck in the face by flying glass and begins to fire through the windshield of the zone car. Officer D said, "I seen two individuals in the car, what appeared to be guns pointing at me. I heard shots and returned fire through the windshield of the zone car." Officer D exits the zone car, taking up a position of cover, and continues to fire at the suspect vehicle. Officers E and F see the rear window of the suspect vehicle shatter and believe they are taking gunfire from the suspect vehicle. They begin to fire at the suspect vehicle while running towards it. Officer E observes an officer go down upon exiting the vice car. Officer E states, "It was just ridiculous. The rounds were just flying. The second I got out, there was just bullets everywhere. Just bullets flying by me. I mean, literally." Officer E returns suppression fire as they ran for cover towards Zone Car 238. Officer E sees the rear window of the suspect vehicle blow out and rounds coming right by them. Officer E said, "I could literally hear them just pinging by my head. I didn't know what to do. I just kept running straight." Officer F shoots twice at the driver through the back window of the suspect vehicle while running with Officer E. Officer F does not see where their rounds hit. Officer G exits car 388, quote, "because I didn't want to be hit by crossfire." Officer G moves down the hill. Officer H exits their vehicle and moves down the hill towards the suspect vehicle. Officer I exits their vehicle and moves away from the scene towards the rear of Zone Car 232. Officers G, H, and I all report hearing gunfire. Officer J said shots rang out when the suspect vehicle hit Zone Car 238. Officer J crawled out of the driver's side of car 243 to the passenger side of car 217. Officer K states, "Bullets started. You could hear them. I mean, they were going everywhere." Officer K is armed with a 12-gauge shotgun. Officer K jumps out of the zone car and runs to the passenger side of car 217. The majority of officers from cars 388, 381, 243, and 232 are exiting or have exited their police cars at this time. Officer B moves towards the driver's side of car 238 for cover and observes the driver of car 238 also taking cover. Officer C exits car 217 and fires while moving to the trunk area of car 238. Officer C fires 5 or 6 rounds into the suspect vehicle because there's still rounds going all over the place. "I feel like I'm being shot by these suspects." Officer C states their pistol is empty, and Officer C crouches behind Zone Car 238 to reload. Officer C observes officers firing coming down the hill to the left. Officers E and F reach the sidewalk area near the front of Zone Car 238. Officer E has expended all ammunition and is not equipped with any spare magazines. Officer F states, "Glass is flying. There's bullets coming by you." Officer G approaches the suspect vehicle as rounds are being fired. "I thought that we were taking fire. I saw glass from the suspect vehicle exploding. I saw bullet holes in the police car here," referring to car 217. Officer H approaches the scene, firing towards the suspect vehicle, while coming down the hill towards Zone Car 238. Officer I has moved down the hill and is moving towards the rear of Zone Car 232. Officers J and K move to the passenger side of Zone Car 217. Officer D asks Officer J to retrieve the shotgun from car 217. Officer J refuses due to the gunfire. Quote, "The shots were continuing to fire. I could literally hear them go past my head." Officer K sees the bullet holes in the windshield of Zone Car 217, and their, quote, "fear level just skyrockets because, quote, I'm in the middle of a shootout right now. It's hard to describe, but you could feel the bullets going past you." It is at this point that Officer K feels something hit their vest. Officer J begins to fire at the suspect vehicle from the passenger fender of car 217, aiming at the driver through the side window. Officer J doesn't know if their rounds hit. After firing, the officer takes cover. Officer K is trying to work the action of the shotgun when Officer J begins shooting near Officer K's head. Officer K can feel the muzzle blast from J's pistol. Officer L leaves the cover of Zone Car 232 and fires 4 times while moving towards the rear of Zone Car 238. Officer L thought they were going to get killed right there because there were shots coming and they were not wearing their ballistic vest because it was removed while Officer L was working out at the district. Officer L sees Officer B dive behind car 238, officers firing down the hill, and Officer C firing from the trunk of zone car 238. Officer L does not believe their shots hit because they were moving while shooting. Officer M initially takes cover in the zone car, but then exits the passenger side of the car and takes up a position of cover at the rear of zone car 232. From this position, Officer M fires 2 rounds at the suspects. Officer M felt they were directly in the line of fire. Officer B remains behind the driver's side of car 238 and pulls the driver of car 238 down to prevent them from being exposed to gunfire. Officer C climbs up on the trunk area of zone car 238 and begins to fire at the suspects over the light bar. Officer C takes this position because they are afraid of being run over by the suspect vehicle and that 9mm bullets are being stopped by the engine block of the suspect vehicle. Officer C feels an elevated position will stop the threat from the suspects. Officer C does not know where their rounds hit. Officer D moves to the rear of zone car 217, performs a magazine exchange, and continues to fire 3 more rounds. Officer E and F begin to run back towards their vehicle for cover. Officer G sees the passenger moving forward and thinks he was loading his gun. Officer G fires 6 times at the passenger. Officer G sees officers coming in and out of my sight picture. I was more concerned about crossfire. I think I yelled out, "Crossfire, crossfire," a couple times. Officer H continues to come down the hillside firing and eventually takes up a cover position at the driver's side of car 238. Officer H fires at the passenger, who is perceived to be loading a weapon, and then the driver, who is still moving. Officer H hears someone yelling, "Crossfire! Watch crossfire!" Officer I takes cover behind car 232 and sees officers firing from the driver's side of car 238. Officer I sees Officer M, quote, scrambling around, and had the impression he was taking fire too, but he was like trying to get away from it. Officer I fires 4 times at the driver through the windshield of the suspect vehicle. Officer J takes cover on the passenger side of car 217. Officer K breaks cover and fires 1 round at the suspect's vehicle with a shotgun. The pellets hit the driver's door of the suspect vehicle. Some pellets penetrate the door, while others ricochet to the rear of the suspect auto. Officer K again takes cover on the side of zone car 217. Officer L moves from the cover of zone car 232, firing at the suspects while moving towards the driver's side of zone car 238. Officer M moves from the rear of zone car 232 to the driver's side, where he fires 2 rounds at the driver of the suspect vehicle. Officer C moves from the trunk of zone car 238 to the hood of the suspect vehicle and fires at the suspects. Officer C has no recollection of this event. Officer M stops firing when they observe Officer C on the hood of the suspect vehicle shooting into the suspect vehicle. Officer M states shots are still being fired while Officer C is on the hood. Officer A approaches the suspect vehicle on foot. Officer C moves to the driver's side of the suspect vehicle, removes the keys from the ignition, and places them on the hood of the vehicle. Officer A is a former paramedic and approaches the passenger side of the suspect vehicle to assess and deliver first aid if necessary. Officer J feels something running down their forehead. Officer J has a small cut, which they believe is from flying glass. Officer L goes back to zone car 232 and puts on their vest. Officer M checked their vest to see if they were hit.